Welcome back to another edition of the Knight Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary, and part-time co-host, Alec Krauthamel. Another day, another commitment for the Scarlet Knights football team, this time in Wydeek Collier. He is a defensive end out of Newman Goretti High School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, listed at 6'5", 205. We'll get into his commitment, how things came together for Rutgers, and what he brings as a player. And we're also going to bring you our latest theory on the defensive coordinator search. But before we get into any of that, this podcast is presented to you by Knight and Day Apparel. Hey, Rutgers fans, get ready to slam dunk your style with Knight and Day Apparel. Cheer on your Scarlet Knights this basketball season in our exclusive Rutgers gear. From trend-setting designs to lifestyle garments, we've got you covered with everything you need to support your team in comfort and flair. Stand out in the crowd and show your passion for Rutgers basketball with designs that celebrate every dribble, dunk, and victory. Use our promo code RutgersRivals to get 10% off your purchase. Don't wait. Head to Knight and Day Apparel today and gear up for game day. Go Knights. We're also presented to you by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to live in-game betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds from everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, and UFC. Head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for a welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, so Wydeek Collier committed today, I guess tonight, depending on when you're listening to this. The 21st ranked player by rivals in the state of Pennsylvania, 5.6 3-star. Looks a little raw from his tape, but he clearly has the agility, the bend to be potentially an impact defensive end. Richie, talk about how his commitment came together for Rutgers, because they had some big-time competition for this kid.
Yeah, so finished with a top 5, which I think was back in October. I think you put it out. Miami, Penn State, Rutgers, Syracuse, West Virginia. I always find it weird when there's top 5s and it's a school that you've never visited. So the only school, unlike Elias Koch, the only school here that he didn't visit was West Virginia. This was coming down to more of a Penn State or Rutgers battle. Now, going back to Elias Koch, it was a very similar commitment, I should say. It sounded like he was Penn State all the way. Pennsylvania kid, makes a lot of sense. They do very well when it comes to the state of Pennsylvania. And I actually put a future cast in for him back in November or October. I forget when. Right after he visited Penn State in early November. So that's what it was. It sounded like he was going to Penn State. It sounded like they were basically locking him up. It was just a formality at this point that he had to announce. Rutgers comes in. Rutgers kept pushing and pushing and pushing. They got him on campus for a third time this past season, back in late November. And they went and visited him recently at his school at Newman Goretti, and they kind of just sealed the deal. Now, part of it's NIL, part of it's Demir Shaw, who has that Philly area basically, I don't want to say on lock, but he's done a good job of recruiting that region. He has a lot of ties locally. We know his brothers are coaches at several schools over there, whether it be Roman Catholic. One of them's at Roman Catholic as the OC. The other one, I forget where he's at, but we know there's a lot of ties for Shaw in that region. So really good get for him. Really good get for Rutgers. And another one you can kind of hold over Penn State's head and say, hey, we didn't beat them once. We beat them twice. And who knows how many other times it could happen this cycle for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, so what would you kind of point to Rutgers' success over Penn State? Because they've long been the boogeyman in Rutgers recruiting, like in the past, let's just say decade since we joined the Big Ten. Like if Penn State really wanted a guy and they offered a guy, they were probably going to get him if they were in New Jersey, Penn State, or Pennsylvania, and they were going against Rutgers. What would you point to as the main reason as to why that's been changing recently?
I mean, you can point to one of two things, but they kind of go hand in hand, and that's NIL and revenue sharing. It helps at the end of the day. When you give Greg Schiano a competitive advantage, or I didn't even say competitive advantage, when you give him a level playing field just about, he's probably one of the better recruiters in the country. Now, I know NIL obviously helps seal the deal with a lot of these kids, but at the end of the day, you still have to recruit them. You still have to build that relationship. And when Greg Schiano's been able to do that, he's proven that he can land just about anyone at this point. I don't want to say he's going to go out and pay $1 million to a 5-star kid, but like this, one of his best recruiting classes ever. I think it was the second best in program history since we started tracking him back in 2002. It was this past cycle. This cycle looks like it's going to be right up there with that, and it's probably going to end up as a top 3, top 4 class in program history. And it wouldn't surprise me if it was number 1 in program history, just based on the trajectory of some of these guys. Like Dizier Carter's a stud, 4-star already, top 150 kid, keeps moving up. Elias Koch, depending on position, I guess could continue to move up. I think Wydeek Collier, if he keeps adding weight, could really continue to move up. Like a lot of high potential kids already, and it's just starting. There's only 3 kids in the class so far, but NIL revenue sharing have helped Rutgers significantly. I know people are super concerned when it first happened because it looked like there was no shot in hell that Rutgers was going to be able to raise money to pay kids because they couldn't raise money to build facilities. Now that Greg's gotten a little bit of a piggy bank now with revenue sharing, with money, with NIL, with donations, whatever you want to call them, it's helped them a ton on the recruiting side of things, whether it be portal, where you're beating out SEC programs for kids, or whether it be the high school route where now you're beating out Penn State for Pennsylvania kids, which, again, like you said, hasn't happened in I don't even know how long.
Yeah, it's been a while, and Collier comes from a very high-end high school for producing talent, New McGready. Anthony Johnson, former Rutgers linebacker, went there. Christian Barmore, the defensive tackle from Patriots who played at Alabama, went there. They produced a ton of kids each year. Alec, what did you see in his tape that really impressed you?
I mean, obviously, he's very good at, just getting off the edge. He has good bend around some of these tackles. He just gets to the quarterback really quickly. And what I've noticed from his highlights as well, he's done a very good job of keeping up with the play, where maybe a tackle, gets on him and kind of stymies him at the first glance, and then you'll see him kind of work back around to the quarterback and finish off the play for a sack. Obviously, he's going to have to put on more weight, but when you have a guy that's like that athletic and at 6'5", too, that's very, very lengthy. He's long. He's got long arms, too, which definitely helps when you're an edge rusher. Getting to that quarterback, even kind of reaching around, just put impact on a play. You're not even getting a sack, things like that definitely help. And also, I mean, I don't think he'll be a receiver at Rutgers, but he's got solid reach. He's got a lot of deep ball touchdowns as well. Just a side note, this doesn't really have to do with him, but their quarterback Deontay Ruffin, I think is his name. He's got a really good arm. He's going to Kent State as well. Signed with them, committed over the summer. So he's got a really good arm. That's what stuck out to me from his highlights. But anyways, back to Collier. It's going to be interesting to see how he grows into his frame. Obviously, at 6'5", 205, that's not really. I wouldn't say it's not really playable at the Big Ten level right now. He's going to have to get in that weight room and really, really put on some weight and muscle to get ready to go up against some of these Big Ten offensive linemen where they got absolute monsters up there. Looking at a school like Ohio State, for example, when you look at what they have. So it's going to be a work in progress, but I think, like Richie said, you bring in a lot of these high ceiling guys where they can keep growing, and he still has another year of high school left. He's got, obviously 2026, so we'll see if he grows in that regard, and, we'll see how he kind of, now that he's, picked a school and it seems like he's going to play defensive end at the next level, see how he can kind of focus more on that. Building for the collegiate level. So yeah, I like this ad, and it's like you guys have been saying, this is a really good high school to tap into. They put out a lot of talent every single year, and this Philadelphia area in general, really high end talent. So especially when you're beating out a team like Penn State, like you said, the kind of boogeyman that you have to battle with, and it's not. You're never going to play with the tier 1 guys like, the Texas, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, those, home run hitters in the recruiting world. But if you can consistently compete with, the tier 2 and tier 3, like a Penn State, like, we've seen the past couple of guys, you're putting yourself in a really good spot to consistently recruit at a high level. You don't always have to, like I said, be with the top 5 guys, but if you can consistently be in that top 25 range, you're setting yourself up for a lot of success.
And Rich, you've heard from people around the program. What are they really high on in terms of Collier's game?
Hold on, I had myself on mute. I have it all written down right here. Projects as a high upside defensive end, likely an edge rusher / like kind of a hybrid linebacker edge rusher that they have now. I don't want to compare him to this, but that the position wise would be an Abdul Carter because he doesn't have that weight or frame, and Abdul Carter's a freak athlete too, to be honest. But the athleticism's there. Like the pass rushing ability needs some work, but for a guy that needs to add some weight, he runs a 4.6 already. Like he's trying to read what else. length, ability. Where is I had his wingspan, 83-inch wingspan, 10-inch hands, 4.6 40. So like that athleticism just screams to me off the charts. And once you get him to learn a little bit of technique on that edge, this guy could be the limit. We've seen guys come into Rutgers, like specifically Kamoko Toure, just super raw, super skinny, super thin. Kind of similar build, I guess, coming out of high school, but Kamoko Toure was just an absolute freak at the high school level. This kid, I think he has a lot of talent, high upside. They think that they can develop into that next Rutgers edge rusher, maybe the next Eric O'Neill. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really know who else to compare him to because I don't know. The Rutgers hasn't really been successful with edge rushers. So you hope ideally by beating out a couple Power 5 programs. All these programs wanted them. We know that all of them were pushing for him. We know I can't speak for Miami specifically or Syracuse specifically or West Virginia specifically, but I can speak to the two that did want him, and that's Rutgers and Penn State. And again, anytime Penn State wants an in-state kid and they lose out on him, I'd say it's a pretty big win for Rutgers.
Yeah, absolutely. Another big commitment. Penn State can't be happy with Rutgers right now.
Yeah.
What are you hearing from their side? Are they just annoyed at this point? Like they just went to the semifinal of the CFP and they're losing recruits left and right to Rutgers.
So it's interesting. It's not just Rutgers per se, because their portal haul has been really bad. They've struck out on wide receivers. They've struck out on defensive tackles. Now, they obviously landed Owen Wayful the other day, a kid who visited Rutgers. Rutgers wanted as well. But there's NIL spending is different, I should say. Like, I was told they didn't want to get into a bidding war over this kid. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Actually, I'll rewind a little bit. I heard that about Elias Koch a couple days ago when he committed, a week ago, whatever it was. And then I heard it again about Wydeek Collier. I was like, okay, is this the excuse now? Like, we're just not going to spend on anything? And it's like, you have to spend on all facets of recruiting. It's not just like, hey, I'm going to go pay this DB who has 2 years left X amount of money. You have to spend it on the high school kids and make promises to the high school kids. And it's interesting because they do it, but they don't do it a ton. And they spend a lot of, like, I don't want to say a percentage because I don't know for sure, but I know the vast majority of their NIL funds at Penn State are spent on retention, which can that work? Sure. And that's how you keep a guy like Drew Aller, a guy like Katron Allen, a guy like Nick Singleton all on the roster, despite all of them probably being draftable this season. So it's a lot of it's on retention. Every program does it differently. We've seen Rutgers do pretty well with retention previously, but we've seen them shift now a little bit more NIL towards recruiting, whether that be the portal. As I mentioned before, you're beating out SEC teams for wide receivers, which is just like crazy to me. And nonetheless, a run-heavy offense too, on top of it all. So it is it's every program does it differently. We know Colorado doesn't even go to the high school route. Like Deion has not stepped foot in the high school since he took over. We know Miami hits the portal pretty hard. We know Ohio State's been a kind of the Rutgers method, I would say. It goes back and forth between high school and portal. Like, oh, I need a quarterback. I need a quarterback now. I can't wait for like a Julian Sang to be ready. So I have to go get one to go to Kansas State. Go grab him. But at the high school route, I'm still going to go get those 5-star kids. So everyone does it differently. Everyone has their own method to it. And that's where I feel like Greg Schiano kind of has an advantage because it's essentially free agency at this point, and having that NFL experience, being able to manage a cap, being able to manage a salary cap, being able to manage a roster when you have to cut down. I feel like the NFL guys have a significant advantage here. And it's not just Greg. Like, I think Belichick will be perfect at UNC because this is the NFL at this point. You're getting paid. You have to manage salaries. You have to manage free agencies. You have to manage like this guy getting pissed off that this guy's getting paid more despite him having more receptions and this and that. So, yeah, long story short, they're not happy about the high school recruiting stuff, but they're not happy about the portal recruiting stuff either. So it's wild how much of a change it is for a semifinal program to not recruit well, really. That being said, they do have like a top 7 class in 2026 right now. So, yeah.
And one thing I will say, I feel like Rutgers has also kind of positioned themselves well to adjust to the portal because of, I don't want to say the failures of, this past cycle, but where you're seeing they could have gone, more heavy in the portal and Greg Schiano saw some of the depth issues that popped up where some of the young guys aren't so ready. So you got to bring in a lot of guys and build your team around the portal. I feel like because of that aspect from last year, Rutgers focused a lot on retention, and they didn't really focus as much on building through the portal. They got some of the plug and play guys like a Malcolm Ray, guys like that. So you've already seen how that can kind of hurt you, and they're adjusting this time around. And I feel like Rutgers has done a good job adjusting in that regard, and they've put themselves in a pretty good spot. And I guess one more thing on Collier, there is an archetype for these kind of guys. He's like, lengthy, smaller. By smaller, I mean not like 270, 280 classic, edge rusher where you're gonna, put your hand in the ground, things like that. Defensive lineman. You got a guy like, I know this is very high bar, but a guy like a James Pierce Jr. at Tennessee, where he's 6'5", I think 247, or 6'5", 243, same thing, where he is ultra bend, ultra athlete, ultra speed, where he can get around the edge. There's an archetype for that. Again, this is a very high bar to clear because James Pierce is probably going to be a first-round pick this year, but that's kind of the mold that you want to build a guy after. And that kind of, when you bring in a guy like that to play him at edge rusher, even if he's only 205 right now, you bring him in the weight program, build him up to maybe 240, 250, and then keep that athleticism and bend, and you have a solid edge rusher with a good skill set to have.
Yeah, I like that comparison. Obviously, this is not a kid who's going to play early. He's going to have to add a ton of size, so nearly a guarantee for a redshirt unless he totally transforms his body in his senior year of high school. But that's fine. You don't want, ideally, linemen to be playing as a true freshman because that means things probably went wrong. And like what you said there, Alec, with their change in philosophy in terms of portal recruiting, by going and getting established players along the lines, it allows guys the insulation to actually develop and not having those early scars affect their development, like messing up plays as a true freshman or a redshirt freshman or a true sophomore, and then thinking, oh, fuck, I can't do anything right. Like, it really helps to get a year or two in a developmental program to actually get your feet underneath you in a safe place like practice and scrimmages and not have to, be a viral meme because you missed a tackle in a big-time game. Anything else on this kid before we talk about some of our defensive coordinator theories out there, Rich?
No. I mean, super athlete. I know people are on the boards are all going to be like, watch his tape. He's a wide receiver with his hands. They like him as an edge rusher. I know every time you see athlete, almost every athlete plays wide receiver at this point.
Yeah.
Like anytime they're listed athlete, it's probably wide receiver DB. This is just a unique case where it's wide receiver defensive end, which he'll pack on the weight. He'll be fine. It's cool too because I guess you can kind of teach him. I don't know what the rules are actually. What you can do and can't do in terms of like saying like, hey, here's how you're going to reshape your body. Here's a plan. Go do it. Also, you don't want to give him a plan and then have him flip later on either. So it's probably a factor. But yeah, shout out to Demir Shaw. Really continuing to prove that he might be the best recruiter on the staff currently. I think it's hard to say because Dave Brock's done a pretty damn good job at wide receiver. I thought Mark Orphy's done a pretty good job at corner. I guess you could argue Kirk as a QB's guy, but that's still to be determined maybe. Flats has been pretty good. Like this is just a really well-built staff for Greg Schiano. But shout out to Shaw for landing another PA kid.
Yeah, that's another thing is that these recruiters who we were all kind of high on, now when they are armed with some level playing fields, you see guys like Colin Farrell, you see guys like Demir Shaw just really putting the pelts up on the wall with how good they're recruiting. And, he's in it with us for a top running back out of South Carolina. I know you just provided an update on him.
Yep.
If you want to just mention that really quick.
Jalen McGill, they went down to see him for an in-home recently. I forget where he's ranked. He's a 4-star kid. Someone just to keep an eye on. If you checked our Twitter account too at Rutgers Rivals, there's a quick little clip from that visit. But really, really talented running back and a name to definitely keep an eye on. I would not be shocked if Rutgers, and it doesn't have to be him specifically, but I wouldn't be shocked if Rutgers lands another 4-star RB in this class just because – they're just stacking them now at this point. And it's so easy to sell the two kids and be like, hey, see that guy on the Chiefs right now? Hey, see Kyle Monangai, who's probably going to get drafted in like the top 3-4 rounds? Yeah, there you go. Those are the last two. Oh yeah, by the way, we just had this freshman, true freshman, by the way, run for what was it, 500 yards, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so you can also play early here. So easy sell. We also run the ball 75% of the time. So it's like, I think it's more in the 60s, but early.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, early 60s, I think.
It's probably high 50s, low 60s, if I had to guess. But
which is, I mean, easy
it's
sell.
still one of the highest run rates in college football.
Yeah.
So I wanted to dive back into the defensive coordinator theory realm, and we could take our tinfoil hats out. We could do our best Jersey
Whatever
Jerry impression.
happened to
that? So I had a crusty old piece of tinfoil that was at my old desk for the longest time, and I just haven't made another one. That's if you really want the actuality of what's happening. So let's get into a little theory casting here, shall we? Joe Harris-Simiak takes the UMass job on December 4th, signing day, or maybe it was the day after signing. I think it was signing day.
Yeah, it was like the morning of signing day that news came out.
Yep. So that was 47 days ago now. We're recording on January 19th. Mm-hmm. That's almost 7 weeks, so almost 2 months where the role is vacant. Now, I think we can say with a good amount of clarity that Schiano's first target was probably Corey Heatherman.
Yeah.
Corey Heatherman gets a contract extension with Minnesota in the middle of December or late December, which puts him on the shelf because the way that contract was structured, it was a 3-year extension where if he left for a Big Ten institution for the same role, so being a coordinator, he would be on the hook for 100% of the remainder of his contract. So the buyout would be $2.5 million. And that's never paid by the coach. That's always paid by whoever hires them. Mm-hmm. But if he left for anywhere else, it was 1/4 of the remaining contract, which was $600K. So that opened a hole for basically anybody else who wanted him. My theory is that Schiano kind of kept tabs on that situation. Maybe had the money for it. I don't know. Ends up at Miami. The point is moot at this point. He's not leaving Miami. You can't get an extension one place, leave for another in a month, and then go somewhere else. So let's safely say that Corey Heatherman's off the table. Now, I can't imagine that Schiano didn't have solid 1B options lined up as well. If they were college coaches this year, you got to imagine that he would have made the announcement already. Like we're bringing kids on campus at this point. So the only thing that really makes sense to me is if that coach is still coaching right now or just finished coaching. And what I mean by that is the coach must be, in my opinion, on a college football playoff team or on an NFL coaching staff that's still alive in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but that's the only thing to me that makes sense as to why this is stretched to now. So we've been looking through both staffs of college football playoff teams and NFL teams in the playoffs. I think we've come up with some very interesting names that make a lot of sense. Two of them that really stick out.
Al Golden.
Al Golden is rumored to be the front runner for the Bengals job. He even went on record saying, like, I don't want to talk about that right now or something in a presser.
Bye-bye.
So let's talk about the two names that stick out the most who are still in the playoffs. The first, Sean Desai. Now, for those who follow the NFL, Sean Desai is the former Bears defensive coordinator, the former Seattle Seahawks defensive coordinator or special assistant. Alec, you could tell me because you're a Seahawks fan.
That whole thing was weird because they promoted Clint Hurt, who was the defensive line coach, defensive coordinator, and then brought in Desai like a week or two later and made him a defensive assistant / assistant head coach. Still not sure what that was, but I think he was solid in his year in Seattle. Although it was Pete Carroll's defense and Clint Hurt's defense, so not really sure. But
also the former Eagles defensive coordinator last year. He's currently a special assistant for the Los Angeles Rams, who are about to kick off now against my beloved Eagles. But he's a guy who has local ties. He's from Connecticut. He played his football at Temple. He coached at Temple for several years. He was an Al Golden disciple. Greg and Al Golden are close. Al Golden is, of course, the former Temple and Miami head coach. That one just kind of makes a lot of sense. His family still apparently lives in New Jersey because when he was the DC at Philly, they moved out, but he's now with the Rams. So that would just make a ton of sense. It's a splashy hire. Schiano has the money to spend, and that would definitely make headlines. The other, I think, is even more intriguing. And Rich, I'll let you take this one. What's the other name that jumped out to you in terms of coaches that make sense?
Chris Hewitt, secondary coach / every single title known to man for the Baltimore Ravens. Assistant head coach, pass game coordinator, secondary coach. Coached at Rutgers from 2004 to 2011 with Greg Schiano, of course, before leaving for the Baltimore Ravens in 2012. So he's been there for God knows how long. He's a New Jersey guy. His son is Chris Hewitt Jr., who's one of the top-ranked 4-star receivers in the country, but also the DMV. And not to mention he's related to current Rutgers quality control coach Matt Hewitt, who has been on staff through a couple coaching changes now, I guess. So, I mean, there is just a lot of ties there. He's never been a DC, but he's been a pass game coordinator for the defense for the Ravens, who notoriously have one of the better defenses in the NFL every single year, basically.
Yeah, his resume is really impressive because, he was a strength and conditioning coach for 1 year, an assistant strength and conditioning coach for 1 year at Notre Dame. Then he gets hired by Greg Schiano in 2004 and coaches at Rutgers for 8 seasons from 2004 to 2011. He gets hired by the Ravens in 2012, and he's coached there ever since. So he's only been a coach under 2 coaches, Greg Schiano, John Harbaugh, and he's coached at 2 places in the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of crazy. Now, this is a bit of a jump, but the thought is if he wants to – I'm just going to make a lot of assumptions here. College coaches, if you listen to I think it was Tom Allen's introductory press conference with Clemson, he talked about how, as a coach, you miss a lot. You miss a lot of games. You miss a lot of moments. And it's hard, especially when you're close to your kids, that you're not there for them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe Chris Hewitt wants to coach his son in college. This would be the opportunity. Rutgers is doing very well with his son recruiting-wise. Maybe this is his opportunity. Get paid a ton of money. Obviously, it's a lot different than what he's currently doing. Like, he's been at the same place in Baltimore. It'd be kind of a leap of faith, but you get paid a lot to be the defensive coordinator. I'm sure he'd get a long contract. He knows Greg so well. It makes sense in that perspective. Again, he's been in Baltimore for a long time now, so I'd be hard-pressed to see him leave, but this would be a huge splash hire for sure for Greg.
He clearly is a big relationship guy. So I'm going back to his way into his past. When he was a 17-year-old freshman at the University of Cincinnati, his special teams coach, Harbaugh. So it's all about relationships for him. Like, he's very loyal because he's been trying to. The other teams have tried to poach him multiple times in the NFL. He's just never left. So he's gotten a new title, a new payday, blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera. So he's been very loyal. There's also talk about him on social media right now that the Colts fans are trying to say we need him as our DC if we're going to go out of house. And then there was Falcons fans raving about him too, but they obviously just hired Ulbrich, so that one's out. I saw several other NFL fan bases trying to get him as well. Like, he is a guy that's going to be a DC sooner rather than later in the NFL. And I think the easiest way to kind of make that next step would probably be to go get some coordinator experience and prove that you can do it. Who better to do it with, and plus the loyalty thing, you can go land your son, you can go coach your son. It makes a lot of sense. Like,
yeah, and it would be one of those things where if we didn't at least talk about him, and then in hindsight it happens, it's like, oh, of course we should have seen that. He coached under Greg for that long. Obviously, Greg's probably talked to him in the past at some point, and now this is the only time it actually made sense. But who knows? These are just we've talked to a lot of people in a lot of realms, and nobody really has a good pulse on what's actually happening with the defensive coordinator. Greg's playing it very close to the vest, so we kind of just have to poke and prod and flip over some rocks and see what makes sense and see if anything's there. But
yeah, I mean, you look at his resume in Baltimore as well. The Ravens have consistently had some of the better pass defenses in the NFL in the last decade or so. And then you got guys like a Kyle Hamilton, who's blossomed into one of the best safeties in the NFL. You got someone like a Marlon Humphrey, who's consistently been, since he was drafted, one of the better corners in the NFL. He's always been, the defensive backs guy. He got promoted to pass defense coordinator in 2020, so he's been doing that for the past 4 years. So you're right, Mike. It does seem like a logical jump forward to be a defensive coordinator. And also, you mentioned it's tough coaching when you don't get to see your kids as much. What better way to do that than help recruit your son and go to Rutgers and help recruit your son there. So it does make a lot of sense. And I think this would be a solid hire, especially considering, like I said, the amount of guys that the Ravens have brought in the secondary and have had success with. Even looking at a guy like, I think his name's Ardarius Washington or something along those lines this year. Not a very highly regarded guy in the draft, and he has really played well next to Kyle Hamilton, and his play has kind of let Kyle Hamilton go back out in that center field range, like rover role in the defensive backfield, and has really helped their pass defense as well. So, I think this would be a pretty interesting hire, and obviously it would help Rutgers in recruiting his son as well. I think this would be a very solid hire, and yeah, this would be one of those where it's like it's sitting under our nose the entire time. How did we not think of this before? But if it does happen, then we uncovered it.
I'm putting FutureCast in ASAP if this happens. Like, you're not, no hesitation. Like, everyone's first reaction, go post the article. Fuck no, I'm going to the FutureCast. Like, Chris Hewitt Jr., Rutgers done. Mark it down. I'm already close to it, to be honest with you. Maryland is the one that's making an interesting little push there. So, I don't think Maryland needs a DC though, do they? Maybe. I don't know.
They need a lot of things. I don't know.
They need a head coach. I'll tell you that much.
Well, they almost their coaches just completed an interview with the Jets. Like, first of all,
I completed an interview with the Jets at this point.
Yeah, how'd that go, Rich?
It's pretty good. Woody Johnson's kind of a dick. He stinks at his job. Like,
you talked to Brick at all?
Yeah, I was going to say,
no,
did you?
no.
I thought I assumed his son would be taking all the calls there, Rich.
No,
I'm surprised you
no.
talked to Woody.
Yeah, I talked to Woody, and then me and Aaron Rodgers did some of that Native American. Yeah. And we were on a different world.
Some of that loud. Yeah.
Well, I think that's what it was, right? Or shrooms, or some kind of psychedelic. Ayahuasca. There you go. See, I didn't even know what it was. I just said, "Screw it. That looks good."
Apparently, it's pretty gross. Makes almost everybody throw up a lot. But
awesome. That explains a lot.
I'm not going to yuck somebody's yum though. If that's your thing, whatever. It's your thing.
I can't imagine we have a lot of people listening to this podcast smoking ayahuasca. Let's be honest.
That's a good point. Well, it shows how much you know. You don't smoke it, you drink it.
If you do, if you ever have, just throw it in the comments under a burner account. I'm just curious. Like, do we have someone that's actually smoke?
Yeah, hit that subscribe button, even if there's 4 of them from your point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your ayahuasca experience? How many demons did you see during your trip?
I didn't have this on my bingo card.
I didn't either. Well, the Birds game has officially started, so that kind of.
Mike, what's your quick prediction so we can see if you're right listening back to this once that this pod goes out?
I think the Eagles win 27-13, hosting the Washington Commanders next weekend at the Link for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. I cannot believe the Lions got dog walked yesterday. I mean,
you guys are already in the Super Bowl at this point.
It just goes to show you need to actually play defense to advance in the oh boy.
Uh-oh. Chris Hewitt announced?
No. No, just watching. Jalen Hurts just had like a 50-yard touchdown run.
Oh my.
Oh, and the game's over. Let's go.
I don't know. I wouldn't count out Sean McVay in the playoffs. That's all I'll say.
Damn, I wouldn't either. Stafford's probably the best quarterback left in the NFC, but I don't know. That would have been a cool if you removed my Eagles from the situation. It would have been a cool NFC Championship game. Rams, Lions, Matt Stafford getting another chance to get revenge on his old team.
All I took away from this is that Alex rooting for his division rivals.
I did not say that. I despise the Rams.
Hinted at it. I'm just saying.
I wouldn't be surprised because I've watched them probably more than the 3 of than you two.
Hey,
Sean McVay, man, that guy is an absolute demon.
Jake Elliott needs to get put out to pasture. He just missed the extra point.
Oh my god,
he missed the extra point.
No one needs to put that dog down. He's been so bad this year.
He's been really bad. Jake the Snake, not so much a snake.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, so that's Collier. That's what we're thinking is going on with the DC situation. Mm-hmm. Thanks once again for listening. To everybody who's liked, subscribed, followed, told a friend. We appreciate you all. If you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. Give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app.
Got some giveaways we're going to start doing soon. Because once we hit that 5K week, we got a bunch of shit. Like, I got that Slam cover. I can't get it down right now because everything's going to pull. But I got an extra version of the magazine for Slam we can give away. I got a Knight and Day Apparel T-shirt, maybe. Yeah, we're doing a giveaway as soon as we hit that 5K mark. And we are like, what, 40 away? 30 away?
We're close. We're less than 30 at this point.
So tell your friends and tell someone else and make like 5 burners and do it on your own. I don't know. And then tell me that the ayahuasca.
Oh, damn. Alec ponying up here. All right. Well, thanks for listening once again. For me, Richie and Alec, this has been another edition of the Knight Report podcast. Signing off.